Hey everybody, I've got a quick Friday update for you on the weekend forecast as we do still have this cold front working its way on through the country, which is going to cause some problems for some of those Saturday and Friday night plans that many of us probably have. So I'm going to break that down for you. I'm also going to give you a bit of a sneak peek into next week's forecast as we do look to get a bit of a pretty significant pattern change, I would say. And we're going to have definitely a lot to talk about next week as well in terms of at least weather that probably will get in the way of some of your plans, but nothing looks too crazy or severe right now, so that is always something good to see. Also, a quick reminder here, just want to remind you, of course, I won't have a video out tomorrow because it is Saturday, so the next update I will have for you will be Sunday, but I will make sure to give you all those details on tomorrow's forecast now, so you're up to date and you have the latest on that. And with that said, let's go ahead and get right into it. So we'll start off with satellite here like we normally do, and as you can see, this is that big low pressure spinning up here above the kind of Midwest there and into the Great Lakes region, and there's this big cold front that swings on down behind that, and that is helping to cause some showers and even some storms this afternoon here right through the Ohio and Tennessee river valleys, and that is beginning to, or not really beginning to, but has had an impact on some of our plans out there this afternoon. It's been a very soggy Friday in places like Louisville, Nashville, Indianapolis, and even back down towards Jackson, Mississippi, and Birmingham, having some pretty unsettled weather this afternoon. But luckily, as we go into tomorrow for those areas, it looks to really clear out, and we'll have a pretty nice Saturday in store. Although, a bit cooler maybe, but now that we're getting into late April, cooler is kind of a nicer thing, really, because you're talking about 60s instead of 70s and 80s. So a really nice Saturday for a lot of those folks. Another thing I want to point out on satellite here, it's kind of interesting and might be a little difficult to see, but you notice this little area here in eastern North Carolina of quick flare-up. That's actually smoke from a wildfire right now. So I just thought that's kind of interesting to point out. And just again, another one of those uses of satellite. It isn't always just about looking at the clouds, but we can always see other things like wildfires on satellite. So that is kind of a cool little meteorological fact there about some of the uses of satellite. I just figured I'd throw that in there since it is something kind of interesting. Looking at radar correlates well with satellite. We have this rain over the central part of the country here, or the east central part of the country I should say, and we do still have some snow showers up here into the Midwest this afternoon as that low continues to crank and is helping to create some back end snow through much of the Dakotas, Minneapolis, and Iowa this Friday. Back out west, things are pretty nice. A couple of showers here into parts of the Rockies, but overall pretty nice weather out west. And then same thing for the East Coast right now, especially east of the Appalachians. Really nice Friday we've had, but that will change going into tomorrow and Sunday for sections of the Northeast. But tomorrow is really going to be the big day of unsettled weather here for areas east of the mountains. And here's one of those reasons why we do have that risk of severe weather tomorrow afternoon from kind of Gainesville and Orlando all the way up the eastern seaboard towards Philadelphia, Trenton, Wilmington, and plenty of places in between here. So really the biggest area I think that we're going to have to worry about that severe weather is going to be eastern Virginia and the eastern Carolinas, really from Charleston all the way up through kind of the DC metro area. And as this line of storms begins to move through tomorrow morning, once we get towards tomorrow afternoon and it has a little bit more instability to work with, we're going to have that heightened risk of severe weather there in that yellow area on your map. So taking a look at that future radar, let me back this up so we get into what we're seeing right now. Again, overnight tonight, expect this area of rain to continue here through sections of Tennessee, Kentucky, much of Mississippi and Alabama overnight tonight. But as we get closer to tomorrow morning, and as we get into about the time the sun is rising, most of us west of the Appalachian chain should begin to really clear out. So back towards Knoxville, kind of Nashville, Birmingham, Jackson, much nicer weather as the sun comes up tomorrow. But while that's ongoing, we're going to see some of these showers work into the Greenville, Spartanburg area, Atlanta, up towards kind of Blacksburg, Virginia, and then even through Charleston, West Virginia, seeing some of that rain tomorrow morning before eventually going into tomorrow afternoon. Those areas clear out, but then that severe weather threat begins to unfold here in this kind of area that I have circled on your map. And you can tell this is a pretty feisty line of storms in a couple different places that the models are hinting at. So expect some pretty strong gusty winds. Hail is also going to be a very big possibility, and even the threat of a couple isolated tornadoes, especially here up into eastern Virginia and eastern North Carolina having the highest chance of that tornado threat tomorrow afternoon. Before by the time we get into tomorrow evening, we begin to hopefully clear out for many of us. So if you have Saturday night plans, it looks pretty nice for much of us here in the southeast, although excluding some of those areas directly on the coast here into North Carolina and Virginia, it looks to be pretty nice. And by the time we get into overnight tomorrow, things will really clear out here into the southeast, other than a little bit of a disturbance back here towards Texas and Arkansas. But for the rest of us, it looks really nice for Saturday night plans. Taking a look at the Northeast as well here. Again, this afternoon, we have had some stronger storms moving through sections of Ohio today, so we'll definitely watch that as that continues into tonight. But once we get into the overnight, that severe threat really dies down, and we see that rain move through much of Ohio, Kentucky, into West Virginia. And then by the time the sun's coming up tomorrow morning, we're getting rain back here into sections of western Pennsylvania, western New York State. And then going into tomorrow afternoon, that rain begins to move through central PA, through central New York State. Still looks like a really nice Saturday for those folks up here into New England, especially kind of Vermont eastbound seems to have a really nice Saturday in store. But then going into Sunday, overnight Saturday into Sunday, I should say, that will begin to deteriorate, and we will see this rain really begin to pick up through these regions, and we'll have a pretty soggy Sunday afternoon as well for many of us there throughout New England. So the other big story here is going to be this cool down, I guess we'll call it. It won't feel necessarily cold because, again, we are getting into late April now, so we've really thrown kind of the winter temperatures back out of the picture, but it will be cooler than what we are experiencing today for many of us, and you can tell going into Sunday afternoon, this pretty well below average weather in terms of temperatures really begins to move in, and then that really locks in going into Monday. Another thing you'll notice as I move this ahead into next week, this really looks to hold on for a while. This is all the way into next Friday, still below average temperatures, and you'll notice back out here to the west come later next week, another area of kind of Canadian air spills in and reinforces this. So this is that pattern change I've been talking about that really is looking to lock in. We will likely not be above average in terms of the temperatures we see for at least another week to week and a half. So that doesn't necessarily mean bad news in terms of if you're an enjoyer of the springtime weather. It might actually feel even more like spring. Now that we're getting closer to summertime, we'll have more of this kind of weather I'm showing you on your map now. So highs closer to 70 and into the 60s compared to the 80s. So this will actually be more spring-like than what we've had the past couple of days as we get into next week. So that will definitely be nice. Also, the air should be drier, so those dew points will be lower, won't be nearly as muggy as we're seeing today through a lot of the eastern half of the country. So again, this is Sunday's high temperature forecast. I think this will be a pretty common story going through much of next week. So looking more at next week in terms of the overall pattern, again, going into this weekend, this high pressure is going to spill into the eastern half of the country behind this cold front, bringing in that cooler and drier weather. But as we get into kind of the middle of next week, we're going to get a couple areas of low pressure that is likely going to ride through the southern tier of the country. And I'll tell you, if you were a snow lover back in the wintertime, you're really wondering where this was then. This beautiful track of low pressure right along the Gulf and this cold air kind of funneling in. This would have been really nice to have in the wintertime for those snow lovers in the east, but unfortunately, as it goes normally, now we are in late April is whenever we're going to get it. So this will be a pretty damp middle part of the week, I think, as we get these areas of low pressure to ride on through. And this is, just one area of low pressure, but the models are even hinting at maybe a couple other areas of low pressure moving on through. And then potentially another pretty big time cold front going into next weekend that could once again bring in some of that cooler Canadian air behind it, as depicted here, with that high pressure spilling back in going into later next weekend. But of course, that's a while out, so we have plenty of time to fine tune that forecast. But what I can tell you is next week does look pretty unsettled, and not really in a severe kind of weather way as much as just kind of a cooler, damp kind of way for much of next week. So that's what we know right now. Again, we've got some severe weather tomorrow to get through, but then we should have a nicer couple of days following that before more kind of cool, damp weather works its way into the forecast for much of the east going into the middle and end of next week. Again, just to remind you here at the end of this video, I will not have a video out tomorrow, but I will make sure to have one out Sunday. And with that said, I hope you all have a great rest of your week and a good start of your weekend, and I will see you all on Sunday.